what do you mean by that? And how did you come to that conclusion, right? Okay, but what comes next? Good question. What comes next, okay? Well, letter A, ask yourself if the person's conclusion is justified by the evidence that he gives, okay? So when someone says something, now, if you know your tactics really well, you kind of give like a automatic and on a robot. What do you mean by that? What do you mean? You know, you can kind of get on a, but eventually you want to get good at thinking, okay, is this person giving any evidence? Is this person just spinning a tale? Are they making up stories? Are they making this up as they go along? Where are they getting their information? So letter A is really saying, you know, is this person's conclusions justified? That's just a normal way of thinking, right? I mean, that's how police officers and judges and teachers, we all say, I mean, where's this person getting their information from? So as someone's talking, are they giving evidence? Or are they just giving their opinion? Make sense? Are they giving evidence, or are they giving their opinion? Okay? Letter B is, if you find you don't have the resources to take the conversation further, let it die a natural death. Make it a learning experience. You have to give yourself grace to fail. If you don't give yourself grace to fail, you'll never try to open your mouth. If you think you have to give a home run or be a superstar or be an expert every time you try to say something, you always fail. I mean, we don't learn piano that way. We don't learn to ride a bike that way. We don't learn to trade that way. But why do we put so much pressure on ourselves when it comes to witnessing? Like, I have to be perfect. I cannot fail. I cannot mess this up. Last time I checked, you're not God, and you're not sovereign, and you're not the Savior. And do you really think that God is going, oh my goodness, Jesus, what are we going to do? Holy Spirit. Oh, I mean, you know, the Trinity is like, you know, short-circuiting, right? Father, Jesus, so, I mean, there's like, Jacob messed up. He was a little bit ticked. What are we going to do? There's no way we can save that guy now. Come on. I mean, really, we put so much pressure on ourselves. It's not real.
Our ping pong left the table and went out the door.
Okay? So again, if it just goes, if you go, you know, it's okay. You know, you're human. Give yourself the grace to be human, right? It's better that you try and you say something than don't try at all. And you can always go back to the number one question, which always is, would you, even back further, would you consider yourself good enough to go to heaven? You can always fall back on that. That's a great question. Change the subject totally. Okay, I failed. Next. I'm not an expert, but I got a question for you. Would you consider yourself good enough to go to heaven? Okay? Okay, so letter C. So as you're talking here, you know, which way do you want the conversation to go? So number one is, okay, this person is, they are just so confused. They need new information. They're just not seeing it clearly. I have to give them new information because they're just not seeing it. So again, what do you mean by that? And the tact, those are just casual conversations. But if you want to take the conversation somewhere, you may have to say, okay, this person is not thinking clearly. They just don't know. They've been given wrong information, and I need to tell them something that's true because they just don't know. Right? This person needs new information, or this person thinks they know everything, but they just maybe haven't really been challenged or exposed their weakness. And you say, well, how do I know when to do that? Well, again, it's practice, it's trying, it's just doing it, it's letting yourself fail. God is not off the throne. Here's the analogy I use. Okay? Did anybody watch the Bulls when Michael Jordan played on the Chicago Bulls? Yes, okay. Tanya and I lived in Chicago, downtown Chicago, when the Chicago Bulls played. Great time to be alive, okay? So Michael Jordan, he just was awesome, right? I mean, when Michael Jordan got the ball, he always what? Won, right? He always won the game, okay? We know who's going to win the game in this game called life, right? We know who's going to win. But isn't it amazing that God has a team? It's called the church. And he pitches the ball to the church and says, take a shot. And we drop the ball, we fail, we mess up, we throw a brick, we throw an air ball. But we know Michael Jordan at the end is going to get the ball and he's going to win. And so God looks at his bench and he sees all these people on their phone. He sees a few people's napping, right? And there's one person on Team Jesus that's like, oh, coach, put me in. And it's like, you, Smith, get in the game. And you're like, yeah. And Jesus throws you the ball, and you're like, ah! And you throw it back, you know. In the end, Michael Jordan's going to slam dunk and win the game, okay? We know how the story of life's going to end. Okay, we know Jesus is going to win. We know God is not off his throne. But in some cosmic, sovereign way, he can still pitch the ball to flawed humans and still win the game. Lanny?
Here's my concern.
Yeah?
Have I done any damage to that other person by just saying, I failed and I'm walking away?
Okay.
What happens now? Have I not given that person a chance to come to the Lord? What have I done?
Okay. This may sound very harsh, but I'll say it anyway. You will not send them to hell any quicker than they're already going. Yeah, but you're worried about their eternal destiny. You're worried about their fate. But there's nothing you're going to say that's already going to make them worse off than where they already are. Sounds harsh, but it's actually true. You're not going to say anything. Well, I'm going to go to hell number 2 then, if that's the way it is. I mean, it's like, no, no, they're already lost. They can't be more lost. And we put way too much pressure on ourselves. Can we get better? Yes. But God is sovereign. God's going to win the game. He moves the chessboard. God is the master chess player. He moves the pieces all over the board. This person says something. This person says something. This person reaches them. And God can do all kinds of things, and we're just one piece in the puzzle. Does that make sense?
So if I failed with that person, then maybe they need Jan, and Jan scores.
Yeah, because who's the captain of the team? It's not you. It's not me. It's Jesus. Yeah. Yeah. If God wants to, look at the Apostle Paul. That's the majority of the New Testament is written to say, I appeared to the Apostle Paul and said, hello. God can do whatever he wishes to save somebody. Okay? So as you're talking to somebody and you're going on this, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Ask yourself, does this person need new information, or do I need to expose a weakness? And we'll talk about that in a second, okay? So what we're going to talk about tonight is something called leading questions. How do you go, letter D, how do you go on the offensive without being offensive? And that's what we call leading questions. Again, doctors, lawyers, they all do it. They're trying now to take you somewhere, which is called leading questions. What are examples of leading questions, okay, on letter F, okay? So we'll just skip E for a second. Letter F. Letter F, what are examples of leading questions? Like, well, okay, so let me ask you a question. Have you ever considered? And that's either you're going to convey new information, or you're going to expose a weakness. That's a leading question. I'm going to be in control of the conversation because I have tactics, I have tools, I have good questions. I know what a leading question is. I'm going to direct this person to a new thought, or I'm going to expose a weakness. Okay, so I hear what you're saying. Jesus was an alien. So have you ever considered blank? Now you're still asking more questions. You're still making them think. Okay, after what you told me, could I ask you a couple questions? Right, that's good. After what you told me, could I ask you a couple questions? And you say, well, I don't know what to ask. That will come in time. That will come in time. So a leading question is you're leading, you're directing, you're in control of the conversation. You have tools and tactics at your belt to know how to talk to somebody. You know, I'm a little confused. Can you help me understand something? So when you say this, why do you, see, that's a leading question. You're deciding, okay, this person they said something so ridiculous that I have to expose that weakness. Or it seems like this person they just need to know X. And just take them that direction. Just take them that direction, okay? Would you mind if I offered you this idea? Those are all leading questions. And the best leading question, just to say, okay, let's get to the point. Let's get right down to it. What's a great leading question? What's the best leading question you could ask somebody? Would you consider yourself good enough to go to heaven? I'm just curious. Right? Everybody thinks about it. The one thing that people want to know is what happens to me when I die. Everybody is spiritual. No one's not spiritual. Why? Because we're all made in the image of God. And because we're all made in the image of God, everybody is spiritual. Everybody wants to know what happens after death. Nobody wants to die because we're made in the image of God. So that's a great question. Now, this is very technical and academic and book, like I'm taking notes and all that stuff. There's no scientific right way to do this stuff. So let's see if I can give you an example, okay? So as you're talking to someone and someone says, well, I don't know if I believe Jesus is the Son of God. Okay, what do you say? Class?
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. What do you mean by that? Ping pong. Now you've put it back on them. Let them explain it. They talk, they talk. You're looking for key ideas, key words, key statements, right? What do you mean by, so when you say Son of God, what do you mean by when you say Son of God? Let them talk. Remember, if you do these 4 questions and at the end of it you go, short circuit, I don't know what to do next, you have done so much already. You've made them think. You've challenged them. You've come across as thoughtful and interested. You're evangelizing, but in a backdoor kind of way. I mean, you're doing, so just give yourself some grace here that this is good stuff. Just this is good stuff, okay? And how did you come to that conclusion? So when you say you don't believe Jesus is the Son of God, I'm just really curious. I mean, how did you come to that conclusion? Right? So now that arrow going up is now like, okay, now this as the person is talking, he's sharing stuff and you're saying, wow, so this person thinks that Jesus is Michael the Archangel. I see a very clear weakness. Does anybody know what religion that is that believes Jesus is Michael the Archangel? Jehovah's Witness, okay? Okay? So obviously that's a weakness. So I'm going to convey new information. They're just out to lunch. They need to hear some new information, okay? So that arrow now is I'm going to lead it into a new topic, a new conversation. Okay, so no right or wrong way. You just say something like, well, isn't it interesting, like in Matthew chapter 1, verse 23, that Jesus is called Emmanuel, which means God with us? Why do you think he was called Emmanuel, which means God with us? That's kind of both. That's kind of exposing a weakness and conveying a new idea. But you've taken the conversation and you're in control and you're bringing it into a new arena. Now, when the person says, well, how do you really know? And they start talking, then what do you always go back to? As you bring the conversation to a new idea or a new subject, you bring the conversation to a new idea or a new subject, and you're leading this person to new ideas and new subjects, once you start talking about that idea or subject, what are you going to do in that new idea or subject? Just spin that wheel again. I had an atheist once. He must have read this book. I tell you what, he went to Boston University, and he was a hard dude, man. He would come out, and he would write signs, and he would place them by where I was preaching, and he would, like, build these signs, and he was, like, just protesting against God. But when you talk to him, he would never challenge me. Everything I'd say to him, he'd always go, well, what do you mean by that? Like, all the time. It was so frustrating. Because everything I said, he challenged, but he never challenged it, like, meanly. He always said, okay, so when you say that God exists, so what do you mean by God exists? Like, he challenged everything I said. It was really hard. So no matter what topic you take it to, you just spin these next couple of questions. Okay? So leading questions, back to the original topic, and then if you just want to say, scrap it, let's get right to the point, which is gospel questions, right? All right, so I'm going to ask Jacob to come up here for a second. My good friend Jacob, he's going to be a guinea pig. Jacob, can you come up for a second? We're going to try and role play here. And for the camera's sake, we're going to stand up. Okay, so let's see. Let's give Jacob a hand. Ever been up here before? Yeah, got the spotlights on you and everything. Okay, so let's stand right here, Jacob. Stand by me a little bit. No, you can stand by me. Oh, I guess we do. Is that on?
I can talk loud.
Okay, that's all right. Andy's my sound man, so just hold it like this. Okay, so let's have Jacob do your best to be kind of like a really self-righteous guy. You're kind of religious, but you're really, really self-righteous.
Okay.
Like you're like half in, half out, half making fun of religion, half not, half believing, half not. Just kind of mocking, but yet believing at the same time. Could you do that?
I'll try.
Okay, all right. So Jacob, so you want to come to church with me this Sunday?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't think I need church.
Okay. So when you say you don't need church, what do you mean by that?
I just don't. I don't really see a need for it. Why go?
Okay. So when you, yeah, I mean, I'm curious. How'd you come to that conclusion?
Well, I just feel like I don't need it. I feel like I'm okay.
You're okay?
Me and God, we're good.
Okay. So when you say good, what do you mean by good?
Meaning that He's okay.
Now remember, I'm doing the outline. The person doesn't know the outline, so they're not going to be like, he's following a script. I mean, when you do it naturally, they're not going to go, he's following, I mean, when you're like, I've never had anybody go, now, you read a book, didn't you? No, right? I mean,
Right.
So I've engaged him in 3 questions, okay? So you just said what?
It's me and God, we're good.
Okay, good.
We're good.
Now, he just threw a right down the middle, right? That's easy, right? So where would I take this leading question to? He just threw it right down the middle.
Left the door wide open.
Yeah. Where would I go? Yeah, that's easy, right? And then we already have the outline of, well, do you think you've kept the 10 Commandments, and have you ever lied before? And so that's easy. Okay, it was a good job. Okay, so I was on the wheel. I asked 2 or 3 questions. He threw it right down the middle. I did a leading question right to the gospel. Okay. Who would you like to be? Who could you be? Who were you before Jesus?
Who was I before Jesus?
Yeah.
Me?
Come on. Were you?
You're still
Yeah,
role playing here?
spiritually. No, we're
No?
done. New
Okay.
person.
New
person.
So, new
Okay,
person?
Yeah. No, seriously. Before Jesus, who were you? Were you aggressive? Were you
I was passive aggressive.
passive aggressive?
Yeah,
Did you make fun of religion or God or the Bible?
No,
or just didn't
no.
know?
We were always, I don't think we really had a saving knowledge.
Okay.
But we were always taught like to pray and stuff. So it was always like this respect, but we didn't know. we didn't have like the proper
Okay.
knowledge to come to
Okay.
that saving faith.
All right. So I'm gonna be a little bit. I want to be the non-Christian now.
Oh, boy.
Okay, you didn't know that. Okay. So I want to be the non-Christian. We're gonna let Jacob be the Christian. Okay.
Okay.
I'll be a little bit harder this time. Okay. So here we go. You know what? I grew up going to church, and I heard all the Bible stories growing up. I think they're great stories, but I'm just not convinced they're true.
So, well, what do you mean by, true?
Okay, how could have Jacob done it even easier? What do you mean by that? Okay, let's try that again.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I grew up in church. I'm not against the Bible. I think there's a lot of great things in there. I'm just not convinced about all the miraculous stories and Jesus walking on water. I need more convincing. I'm just not totally convinced that the Bible is totally true. I'm open to it, but I'm not totally convinced.
Well, what do you mean by that?
There you go. Okay. Now, when they ask you that question, when someone asks you that question, what do you mean by that? Did you feel like, oh my goodness, I have to work now? I have to think? Now, he's making me think. Okay, so, yeah. So, I think there's some really good moral stories in there, like Jesus healing the women and the disciples and Noah's Ark, and Jesus loving children. But I'm just not convinced that Jesus walked on water or there was a Noah's flood. I just think those stories are a little bit fanatical to me. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but they just sound a little bit fanatical to me.
Okay, was my reaction to the word fanatical bad?
No,
Because
you're smiling. He's smiling. He's good, right? So I'm getting a little bit edgy, right? I'm calling it fanatical, but I'm being nice about it. Okay, so yeah, it's a tad fanatical. I mean, I don't mean to be rude, but
Right.
I'm just not. I can't. Those are things that we just don't see happening in normal life. So if you're asking me to believe in a God that created out of nothing, that flooded the world, and Jesus walking on water, I just, have a hard time believing that they seem a little bit fanatical to me.
Okay. Fanatical is kind of a strong word, so could you explain to me what you mean by fanatical?
Yeah, he's doing a good job, right? Okay, so now think of a leading question. I want to bring in a new topic, new
Okay.
information, or I'm going to say something so outrageous that you're going to try and hold me to it and expose a weakness, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So, you know what? I just think, I think what it is back then, I think the people were so primitive that they had, they let their imaginations run wild. And they thought things and saw things that just weren't true. And they made up stories that were just really fanatical because they wanted to believe in God so much that they just had these fanatical, crazy stories that they just made up. Now, from what am I doing with him? It's called clever sounding stories or an assertion, right? So to expose a weakness, you could easily say, what?
Well, how did you come to that conclusion?
That could be that easy. Or if you wanted to lead me down a whole new trail of exposing a weakness,
Right.
what else could you say? Look at your guys' leading question sheet. What else could you say?
I'm a little confused. Help me understand why you think that's fanatical.
There, I'm a little confused. Help me understand why you think that's fanatical.
Yeah. See, again, he's making me think, he's making me do the work, okay? Yeah, so fanatical, it's just, I just think people just weren't educated, they weren't trained, they didn't have universities, they didn't schools. So I think they had the freedom just to kind of believe what they want. There was no fact-checking back then. I think people probably made up stories. And you know how stories go. One person says it, and then it gets passed on.
Like telephone game.
Yeah, and so I just think a lot of the Bible was probably just these fanatical religious people that probably had these great ideas, and it got passed down, and it became kind of legend over time. So to expose a weakness, all he could say is, okay, so when you say that, do you have any
Evidence.
proof? Yeah. remember, whoever makes the claim has to bear the burden of what?
Right, burden of proof.
So if he's going to try to expose a weakness to me, hold him to that, right? Hold him to it, but be gracious about it, but say, okay, so you made some really amazing claims there. So when you say, you know, the Bible is legend, or these people passed down these stories, do you have any evidence to prove that? Or do you have any,
Right.
does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
It's a lot better with my notes in front of me.
I know. Lanny?
If you say, do you have any evidence, that closes it, it's a closed-ended question. Wouldn't you want to give an open-ended question and let him continue to think about offering a proof?
Yeah, I am asking him. He is asking me for some evidence. That's a good thing. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, let's switch the subject for a second. So, I'm Mormon. Okay?
Sorry?
Yeah. And Joseph Smith was he found these golden plates, and on these golden plates were written this ancient language, which translated became the Book of Mormon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you mean by that?
Well, just like I said, that he found this ancient language on these golden tablets that became the Book of Mormon when Joseph Smith translated it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So.
Poor Jacob.
Yeah.
Poor Jacob.
I mean, I got a cheat sheet in front of me, but that's not one of the ones. It's a leading question. I think I'll get you off that.
All right. What could we say for Jacob? Okay, so the first thing we always do is our little circle thing, right?
What do you mean by that?
What do you mean by golden plates? What do you mean translated? What do you mean ancient language? Who translated it? Who's Joseph Smith? How did you come to that conclusion?
Okay.
You just had a 10-minute conversation.
So if you said, for the leading question, if you said, after what you told me, could I ask you a couple of questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So, but remember, even if you don't know anything about Mormonism, you just had a 10-minute conversation because you're using
Right.
the initial tactics. Make sense?
Right. Should have been specific about, what do you mean by, instead of what do you mean by that.
Yeah, and so and as a person's talking and spinning tales and making up stories, and as you're thinking, you're going, okay, does this person need new information, or am I going to expose a weakness here?
Gotcha.
So I can go back here and see if here's a couple leading questions, okay? Okay, someone give me a topic in the few minutes we have left tonight. Someone give me a topic. Be nice. Okay, someone give me a topic. Ken, you have some non-Christian friends. Give me a topic. Excuse me? The omnipotence of God.
Said be nice.
Okay, that's all right. We can do this. Okay. All right, so you're Christian. I'm
Okay.
not Christian. Okay. The omnipotence of God. Okay. I mean, how can God be all-powerful? I mean, can God make a rock so big? Can God make a rock so big he can't lift it? I mean, if God's all-powerful, he can do anything, right? I mean, he could make a rock so big. I mean, could God make a rock so big he couldn't lift it? That wouldn't make God all-powerful, though, would it? That's a really hard one. But if you have your tactics, he's good. He's good.
Right?
Okay. So don't freak out.
Okay.
Just use your tactics. So go back to the beginning.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so
So when I was growing up, I was taught that God was all powerful.
right.
Then I took a philosophy class at MSU, and the philosophy professor posed this question to me that really bothered me. And he said, "Well, if God is all powerful, could God make a rock so big he couldn't lift it?" So if God is all powerful, he could make a rock so big he couldn't lift it, but that's a contradiction. God would have to make a rock so big he couldn't lift it, but that's a contradiction if God's all powerful. That's really messy. All right, I'm doing that on purpose, okay? All right.
So
Nope. That's it. That's all
That's
you got.
it?
That's all you got to do.
That's the opener right there.
It is.
Okay.
That's it. We make it too hard on ourselves.
Well, I was trying to figure out whether that one was a simple, that one
Always
there,
the
or if
question.
there's something to grab onto.
Always
what
the
you were
question.
saying. Always the question.
And you know what these do? These give you stalling time to think. They give you stalling time to think of other good questions. They give you stalling time to think of a leading question, right? They give you stalling time to think of where am I going to take this conversation. Make sense? And let's face it, if you get a real heady intellectual guy like that, you just look at him and go, you know what? I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm sorry. You know, look it up on Google. I don't know. No, really. No, really. Right? Give yourself grace to go, I don't know. Good question. Never thought of it.
Right.
Can you give yourself grace to go, I don't know. Never thought of it.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that. Okay, anyone else? Good job, Ken. That was nice and hard. But it was still good because you freaked out, you got nervous.
Right.
But it really, again, these tactics are so good that anything, okay, so you be the guy and I'll be you.
Okay.
I'll be the Christian, you be the non-Christian.
Okay.
So just, okay, so say something like, well, how can God be all powerful? That doesn't make any sense.
Okay. How can God be all powerful? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I see what you're coming from. It is a hard one for a lot of people. When you say it doesn't make any sense, what do you mean by that?
It's incomprehensible. It's just, how can something be all powerful? I mean,
Right.
everything's got limits, right?
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I'm not really totally knowledgeable on this subject, but it sounds like you've thought of it for a little while. I mean, how did you come to that conclusion where you're at right now? That
And there we are.
you could always spin it back, right? All right. Well, for the sake of the gospel, let's have let's be. I'll be religious guy.
Okay.
Okay. So you can be Christian. I'll be religious guy. Okay. Well, as long as we're sincere, that's what God really wants in the end.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Good. Well, I just think that as long as God knows, as long as you try, that's what really matters.
As long as you try.
Yep. That's what my mom always taught me.
So what do you mean by try?
Good question. Right? Try like, you try to keep the commandments.
Mm-hmm.
You try to be a good person. You try to love your neighbor. You try not to lie. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned the commandments.
Mm-hmm.
Could I ask you a couple questions?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, would you think you're good enough to go to heaven?
Yeah, good job. Bingo, right? Good job. Okay, I'm a Roman Catholic priest. How's that? I've always wanted to wear that collar for like a day, just walk around. That'd be kind of fun, That would be kind of fun. And my wife be a nun. That'd be awesome. Maybe we could be a priest and a nun for Halloween. That would be kind of fun. Knock on your door. That'd be kind of fun. Yeah, so I'm a priest. Okay, so I'm pretty religious. Okay. So, son, when was the last time you said your last confession?
Wow.
I mean, you're not? Oh, I thought you were Catholic. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not Catholic.
You're not Catholic.
No.
So, are you religious?
Am I religious?
Yeah.
I'm a Christian.
Oh, you are.
Yes.
Okay. So, you should come back to the one true church.
The one true church? What do you mean by that?
I've had people say that to me. Can I tell you a quick story? Okay. So I had this guy come up to me once, and he came up real close to me like that, and he was really, really forceful, and he was mad at me because I wasn't part of the one true church, and he said there's one God, one Savior, and one church. And he put a Roman Catholic pamphlet in my hand. And I said, okay, so excuse me, tell me your name. His name is Emmanuel. Okay? I remembered that. Well, back in the day, I had speakers on my van. And like a month later, we're driving through downtown, and I saw Emmanuel walk out of the Roman Catholic Church downtown. And we just happened to have the speakers on. And we were driving by, and we said, Emmanuel. And he went, That's a true story. Okay, back to the point. That's a true story. I saw him after that. It's no big deal. Okay, but I didn't tell him what happened that day. All right. We're having fun, right? We're having fun. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so he did a good job. Okay, so so son, you need to come back. I can sense are you Hispanic?
Yeah.
You have Roman Catholic people in your family?
Not practicing.
But you do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I would encourage you to come back to the one true church.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think God established when he left earth that he said, I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And when he said that, he was referring to the Roman Universal Catholic Church. Now, I just threw him right down the middle, okay? So if you want to convey new information or expose a weakness, that's huge, right? Right? How could you expose a weakness to something that, hello, how could you do that?
Okay, how would you do that with still maintaining the question thing? Because
Yeah,
that seems like a segue for the gospel, but
you could. Okay, but I just translated Matthew 16 to be the Roman Catholic Church.
right, and it's not. That's
really adding something to the Bible that's not there,
Right.
right? I mean, that's really clear. Okay, so what would be a leading question to expose a weakness or convey new information when I just said that?
Would that be the one?
It could be any of these. It's not, you don't have to
Yeah.
be.
I don't know. I mean, I would want to know why you thought that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
almost like want to sit down with the Bible with you and see how you came to that
Now,
conclusion.
okay, did you hear what he said? Why do you think that? That's fine, right? He's exposing a weakness, he's challenging, he wants to know where I got that information from. Nothing wrong with that, right? Remember, whoever makes the claim has to bear the burden of proof.
Right.
So I just said the church that Christ is going to build in Matthew 16 is a Roman Catholic Church. Now, millions of people believe that, okay? And if you're not, so it matters. This matters. So go ahead and go for it.
Okay. Why would you think that? I mean,
Well,
what is your?
okay, well, because the one true church that Jesus built
Mm-hmm.
was a Roman Catholic Church, and we know that because all other churches were not organized and they were corrupted, and the church that Christ built was the one in Rome. We know that from history because God appeared to the Emperor Constantine and gave him this information, and on we go, okay? So now remember, if you just want to say, this is ridiculous, I don't even know what to say, where would you go? Yeah, you'd say, you know what, sir, I'm not very good with church history. Sounds like you know more than I do, but can I ask you a question? Would you consider yourself good enough to go to heaven? Because that's the number one apologetic, right?
Right.
So let's get to the point, okay? Okay, so Jacob deserves an ice cream after this, okay? All right, so, no, he's not done yet. He's not done yet. We got 2 minutes. we got 2 minutes, okay.
I want sprinkles on my ice cream.
Okay, so we got 2 minutes. So I'll be the Christian. You be
Okay.
the non-Christian.
Okay.
You be a Muslim. Just be a good self-righteous Muslim.
Okay.
Okay. So say something like, you have to be a Muslim to go to heaven.
Okay. You would have to be. I believe you would have to be a Muslim to get into paradise.
Okay. Class? Or else, what do you mean by what? Paradise? Or how did you what? Okay, very good. Well, so actually as a Christian, we believe that you don't have to be good enough. You don't have to be good enough to go to heaven by trying to be faithful. Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself good enough to go to heaven?
According to the teachings of the Quran, yes.
Okay. Do you think you've kept God's commandments?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever told a lie? See, I mean, it works for anybody, because everybody at their core is made in God's image. We're all spiritual beings, and we know the number doesn't mean a Catholic, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, skeptic. The basis of everyone's belief is that it's pride and self-righteousness. So remember, if I can bring it back to the gospel and man's self-effort, it's always a win. It's always a win. You did good, man. And guess what? We're friends.
Yeah.
And we can practice on each other.
Okay.
All right.
We'll do that.
All right. Well, again, I just encourage you guys to not be so hard on yourself. Pray for opportunities, practice, and remember that these tactics are useful with anybody in any situation, anywhere. Does that make sense? Okay. I've designed this material for something very specific. The first 3 classes are very practical. I want you guys to walk away from these first 3 sessions to feel like, you know what, I can do this. I have tools under my belt. This isn't so hard. I want you guys to feel that way, because a lot of apologetics is like, up here, you have to be a scientist, you have to be a philosopher, you have to be Ravi Zacharias, and you say, well, I can't do that. I want you guys to feel that you have something under your belt to feel like, oh, maybe I can do this. Okay, so now, starting next week, we're going to turn the corner, and now we're going to start to get into leaving a little bit of the practical just behind just a little bit, and now we're going to get into, not totally, I'm going to help you answer all these questions. For next week, we're going to talk about, does truth exist? What would you, look at page 23 in your notes, okay? What would you do if someone says to you, well, there is no truth. There's no absolute truth. Truth doesn't exist. No one can know the truth. I mean, you can't know the truth. You can't know anything for sure. What's true for you is true for you. Everything is meaningless. And plus, you should doubt everything. And you shouldn't judge. Christians shouldn't judge. There's no truth in anything but science. Christians shouldn't push their views on others, and on it goes. We're going to answer all those questions and more, and I'm going to give you a very